about to drop the hammer and dispense some indiscriminate justice.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Strongman Personal Finance. I'm Christopher Bell, certified public accountant, long-term boglehead investor, author of the book Stopping a Broke Loser. It's on Amazon for $3, and lover of Vanguard Index ETFs. It's pretty funny because usually I say I hate stuff on my videos, but I'm just all love and flowers and sunshine today. Now what we're going to do is we're going to compare two Vanguard ETFs that track international market indices. We have the VEU ETF, which is the Vanguard FTSE All World VXUS Index Fund. And then I don't know why they call it Index Fund, it should be ETF. And then VXUS, which is the Vanguard Total International Stock ETF. VXUS is on the right, VEU is on the left, if you can't see very well. Now, what are these? They seem almost exactly the same. I mean, just look at it. Their category, they're both foreign large cap equities. They both seem to track basically the entire world outside the United States. The indexes are named differently, but they're basically the same thing. Expense ratio, exactly the same. Issuer, Vanguard. Now, the main difference, the first difference that's kind of big, is the assets under management. VEU has 35 billion under management, whereas VXUS has 48 billion, almost 49 billion under management. That means that VXUS is probably a little bit more liquid. You're able to sell it without paying massive, bid-ask spreads or buy it compared to VEU. But they both have a huge amount of dollars invested in them. So I wouldn't worry about liquidity too much with these funds. But that's something to keep in mind. Now let's look at the holdings. Let's compare these two massively different ETFs. So here is the key difference. You're going to see this right off the bat. VEU has 3,500 holdings, whereas VXUS has 7,478 holdings. Now, if you look at the top holdings in each one, they're all the freaking same. I mean, there's some variations, but Alibaba's the biggest in both, 2.19% in VEU and 2.01% in VXUS. Tencent, Nestle, Taiwan Semiconductor, Samsung, Roche Holdings, Roche, Novartis, SAP. These seem like the exact same things. So what is the difference? The main difference is that VXUS, the one on the right with the 7,478 holdings, also includes small cap stocks, whereas VEU doesn't. Now, let's go to the Vanguard website and let's look at the difference between these two. And the main difference, like I said, is the index. The index. That is the main differentiation between basically every ETF that tries to track a certain market is how is the index constructed? Now, for VXUS, they use the FTC Global All Cap. All Cap. That means all market caps. Mega cap, large cap, mid cap, small cap, probably even micro cap. Whereas you compare it to VEU, it's the FTC All World XUS Index, but they actually exclude smaller stocks. Could be for whatever reason. Now, let's compare the performance, and you're going to laugh, okay? Look at this little chart right here. Do you see the yellow and the blue? Do you see how perfectly they freaking track each other? They're almost exactly correlated. As a matter of fact, had you put your money in VXUS and you invested it for 10 years, you would have about $56, $56 more than if you had put your money in VEU. So there's basically no freaking difference, okay? Personally, I'd rather buy the index ETF that has more stock, so I'd probably go with VXUS. But when it comes to your long-term wealth building, same freaking expense ratio and almost perfectly correlated, and you're exposed to a broad swath of the international market. In my opinion, flip a freaking coin if you can't decide and pick one. And don't think anything beyond that. But personally, I'd rather do VXUS because I like owning as many stocks as possible. It's kind of like the VTI versus VOO debate in the United States. Do you want the S&P 500 or do you want the total market? They're both highly correlated because they all have basically the same stocks, But there's slight variations because VTI has a lot more small caps and micro caps. It's the same thing between VXUS and VEU. It's up to your personal preference, but don't sit around all day and try to like slice and dice the difference between these two. Just freaking pick one, okay? Now, I like using ETFdatabase.com, and this is a great tool for you to look at these two. I mean, it gives you a ton of breakdowns. So if you scroll down, you can actually see how the sectors are different between these two, how the market cap is different. This is actually basically cued me into exactly what the difference is. If you look at VEU's market cap, it's large, mid, and just a tiny amount of small caps. Whereas you look at VXUS, it has a little bit more mid caps, and about 5% of its portfolio has 5% more in small caps. That's the main difference. In VEU, you're going to be a little bit more concentrated in Europe, whereas in VXUS, the European percentage goes down and the Asia Pacific percentage goes down, but the other percentage goes up. Now the other, like basically what you're getting exposed to is like Turkey, Hungary, Greece, Bermuda, Portugal, Argentina, Ukraine, stuff like that. So you're basically invested in everything with VXUS, where that's not necessarily the case with VEU. But it's the same crap. I mean, come on. You can't get too crazy with this, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this correlation matrix. So if you see a 1 there, and this is VEU compared to VXUS, if you see a 1, that means they're exactly correlated, which means they move exactly in sync with each other. Okay, and that's obvious just by looking at the performance, comparing it. They basically give you the same return with slight variations. Now, one thing to note is VXUS does give you or has historically given you a slightly higher return. So if you look at the 10-year return of VXUS, it's 5.72% per year compounded, whereas VEU is 5.69%. So VXUS would have given you 0.03% more compounded over 10 years. I mean, in my opinion, that's insignificant. I mean, it matters. You have a little bit more money, but come on. So just make a freaking choice, okay? I'm sick of these games. I'm sick of you people being indecisive. You need to have U.S. exposure, preferably with VTI, and you need to have international exposure. You can choose VEU or you can choose VXUS. It doesn't freaking matter, okay? Anyway, that's my explanation. You need to look at this stuff before you buy ETFs. It's important, but I wanted to explain the difference, which basically there is none. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, tell your friends about me, and you have a wonderful, delicious, superstitious, cockalicious day.